your submission rate in competition absolutely sucks, there's a couple of reasons why. But in my experience, the biggest reason seems to be that you have no ability to take your training partner down, either because you've never learned how to do them, or you simply just don't know what to do when you are on the feet. Recently, hundreds of students applied to be roasted by me on this channel so that I can teach them more effective ways of getting people down towards the floor so that they can compete comfortably and confidently, having more control within their competition rounds. If that sounds like something you want, we're about to break down a couple of key concepts as to how you can get much better on the feet, get people down to the floor, pin them and exhaust them without them getting up, eventually end up increasing your submission rate, your bragging rights, and the amount of gold medals you have in a box in the garage that you never look at. Let's dive right in. Elias is going to be first off the rank. Now, one of the biggest things that I tend to see with more novice competitors, white belts, blue belts, people who haven't competed a whole ton, is that they come out of the gates absolutely crazy. Everything is full of resistance. Everything is full of speed and explosiveness and strength and just grit. Elias doesn't make these mistakes, which is absolutely fantastic. And you can see there's a little bit of speed, but there's a relative composure and relaxation towards what he's attempting to do. So brownie points for him in the beginning. The first thing we are going to fix up though is this eye-line to eye-line level. Typically what we want to achieve in jiu-jitsu, and you see it in wrestling all the time, this is something we borrowed from freestyle wrestling because no one in jiu-jitsu knows how to fucking wrestle at all, is if your eyebrow and his eyebrow are the same level, they're going to find it really difficult to shoot because your head is going to be a block that will prevent them reaching down and grabbing on your legs. So the first thing we're going to fix is that. The second thing we're going to fix is making sure that we have a bladed stance that is very purposeful. I see this all the time in these reviews that I do, and your feet are way too close together, your knees are way too close together, and so if somebody takes a shot on you, the likelihood that they have success is quite high. And we want to negate that as much as possible. You can give up one leg. Most of the time you have a down block hand in place over your lead leg, which is the third thing we're going to fix for Elias here. But even if they do attach themselves to one leg, that's significantly easier to deal with than two legs. Locked doubles around the arse or around the knees, you're probably going to go down 9 times out of 10. Whereas if you stop them from doing that with your stance and your posture and your lead hand, the likelihood that they even get one leg, let alone two legs, is quite low. So we want to fix those things. The second thing we want to fix is reaching from too far away. If you reach from too far away, you don't really give your opponent any motivation to defend correctly. Now, what Elias is doing correct here is actually mixing upper body and lower body takedowns, which is a constant thing that I see where people will only use Greco-Roman style of techniques. And I've been guilty of this in my competing as well, where you think underhooks, 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 and then collar tie, collar tie, collar tie, and you forget about the lower body. And this is something I talk about in my instructional, that if you mix in lower body and upper body takedowns, you kind of split their mind in two different places and enhance the capacity, or rather the effectiveness of one by taking the other. Very similar concept to going left before going right. Going up before going down tends to be a much easier process to get success because they're dealing with two things at once. Your ability to do that over time will exhaust your partner mentally as well as physically. So he's getting to good positions in terms of collar ties, but again, we're seeing this stance very narrow and the hands aren't really purposeful. You don't want to just have your hands dangling in any old spot. If you're wondering what the example of good hand fighting posture looks like, we're going to look at that in the next two examples so we can clean up these visually for you guys, not just verbally. But you'll start to see it makes a huge difference in not only your attacking, but also your defending. And so really what we want is Elias is choosing to have a right leg lead, right hand down block, reach with the left hand so that you don't leave your lead leg unassisted, and then you'll be in a much better position. So he's doing a great job at getting to inside bicep ties here, reaches down and takes the shot, but we want to match this to what our opponent's doing, right? So on this far hand side, you see that his opponent has taken a rather wide elbow. This to me, as he moves his leg back, shows me that there's an underhook available. As he moves his leg forwards, yes, absolutely, you could think about using outside picks for singles, but if I was to do this, I would probably go underhook first, see the response, then go far side knee tap if he didn't respond correctly. Or if he does bunker down on the underhook but leaves his lead leg there, then I can start to go down and take the outside pick for the leg, because I've got him worried about dealing with the upper body and his torso, as opposed to just going down into a down block that you can see here that's going to create distance and ultimately ruin the success of the shot. Now, he does persist. Elias does a great job at switching to a double here. There he goes, single leg, and then immediately goes to the double. That was actually a great decision. So he didn't end up picking up the single and just staying there. Even though his partner does get his hips behind his shoulders a little bit, he fails to make the adjustment as Elias runs across him, and then he ends up getting a successful takedown. But because he was because of the way he set this up, and it was all a little bit frantic, a little bit chaotic, he was unsuccessful in the follow-up pin. And the way we fixed that primarily is by focusing on takedowns that typically lead us covering the hips or in between the legs. So if you take an Uchimata, for example, sometimes they are unsuccessful because you end up in side control. They can turn their hips over and then immediately start to wrestle up. Versus if you were to use a blast double, where you most likely end up in close guard, the likelihood that you secure that pin in the follow-up series is quite high because you're between their legs. If you could think about Uchimata only ending you up in half guard, so that you're purposefully putting your knee between their legs as you land, that would be an increase of your technique, in my opinion, so that you can pin their hips and not have to worry about these follow-up wrestle-up sequences. And so because Elias has run him over this direction, his momentum carried him over to this far side. He ends up going front headlock and trying to worry about the shoulders, whereas what he should have done here is circle back towards the hips, potentially even staying on the single, going to a dogfight position, or even running a secondary double, but circling around the other side so that he could actually get a successful pin after this takedown and keep his opponent down, as opposed to having this follow-up front headlock sequence where we burn a lot of energy and then we end up in a neutral position again. So first things that we looked at were fixing postural corrections with eyebrows, down blocking hands, reaching with the rear hand, not the lead hand, and then making sure that our stance is in a good width and bladed, so that we don't get up, so that we don't end up in situations where our knees are very close together, we're unable to create a lot of momentum and a lot of movement quite quickly, and then leave ourselves open for easy double legs. We want to always, if we have to give up a leg, or if we have to give up access to the lower body, preferentially one leg. Just the way that it goes to sort these takedowns out. Now we're going to look at an example from Chris with really nice posture and really nice hand fighting. And now the similarities between the two, Elias and Chris, both do a great job at being fluid. They're not trying to overcompensate too heavily with speed, strength, or explosiveness. But the difference is going to be obvious from Elias compared to Chris when you see how he hand fights, the way that his posture looks, and then the obvious takedown success at the very end of this clip. So Chris is doing a great job leading with his left leg. He's got his left hand down so that he can prevent shots until his right hand maintains contact or gains contact with his training partner. Then his left leg can start to come up. Then his left hand can start to come up and prod for inside bicep ties, switching to collar ties, switching back the other side. It's a really good strategy if you're not doing that already. And then he can start to just prod, work his way into arm drag situations, work his way into Russians off collar ties if he likes. But because he's got his stance and his posture in a really nice format, he's able to take his mind away from being purely defensive to mainly offensive. And if you can do that, you can start to get your opponent responding to what you're doing rather than the other way around. There's always going to be ebbs and flows and bits of both. But if you're the one leading the dance, you're the one that's going to have disproportionate success over your opponents. And so again, really nice smooth method. He's not going too crazy or too fast or anything like that. He's not really trying to overcompensate. And his opponent ends up taking a collar tie on the near side. Once he's maintained contact with his partner, he's free and able to take his lead hand away from his lead leg. Because he's got connection, it's very unlikely that his opponent's going to shoot into him and have an effective shot. because it's very difficult, especially as jiu-jitsu guys, when we're really upright, to get underneath elbows and then get towards the legs. It's a beautiful slide by here. Going inside bicep tie, foot to foot on this near side is essential. If you're in an opposite stance, they're both kind of square at this point, but if you're in opposite stances where your lead leg is over here and his lead leg is over here, you're going to find the slide by quite awkward when you start to peel it around the corner, because your body's just not going to turn the right way. This is just my experience. I could be wrong, but typically when I'm looking for slide bys in my own training and my competing, I'm looking lead leg to lead leg. And it seems to be a little bit easier just to pivot off that side as you start to take your ear towards your shoulder and then flank your training partner. Now, Chris does a fantastic job reaching around to the far hip. He actually maintains contact to the far hip. If you do a slide by and they take their far hip too far away from you, this leg is always able to be attacked. And like I said in the previous section, if you can't get access to the upper body, go to the lower. If you can't get access to the lower, go to the upper. Vice versa is going to put your training partner in two minds, and it's going to increase your chances of success with your techniques. He does a great job staying connected with the claw, ends up rotating all the way through the back, and then gets a beautiful rear naked strangle as a result. And you can see that because Chris has good hand fighting, good presence, good technique selection, and good postural defense. Sorry, my finger's kind of fucked up. I always think this is really funny when I start to count and this finger is just destroyed. Good postural awareness, he can think about offensive sequences first as opposed to defensive sequences first. And it does make a huge difference. If you aren't doing these things, I definitely recommend that you do it. Third example, another good example from Adam here. We're going to watch his presence, his composure, and the way that he's actually reaching with the correct hands and the correct stances. So you can see that he's got his lead leg covered, left hand side, and he's starting to lead with contact with the right hand before taking that left hand away, so that he's not liable for shots on this lead leg, or at least if he is, that left forearm of his can start to cover the space between his knee and his opponent's shoulder. And I like to think about it like this. Hopefully this makes sense for you. It makes sense for me. Is that my arm is going to be a notification that I need to take my leg away. If I'm taking my arm away, I don't get that same notification before it's already too late and they contact my leg. Then I have to go into freak out mode essentially, because they're attached to my leg, and that means single legs. And if your single leg defense isn't that good, it means you're going to get taken down and start on bottom, and then it cascades from there. Whereas if your lead hand is always ready to down block that front leg, you can think, oh, okay, they've contacted my arm, take my leg back. And then you sprawl away, and 9 times out of 10, you end up evading any sort of contact to your single leg anyway. So it's a really good strategy. Again, we're not seeing that typical response where we're having a lot of strain and a lot of reliance on speed, which is really great from all three of these guys. And that really is how you get good breakthroughs in the stand-up position. It's not one-hit wonders. It's not sprinting through. It's setting things up systematically and then reaching down to lower legs to get them to sprawl their leg backwards so that it opens up their torso, and then clubbing the collar tie and starting to move them forwards. Not calf kicking like Adam just did. Generally, it's a good idea to get people either taking their foot off the floor or about to put their foot on the floor if the diashi is going to work. And it's also a good idea to try and hook in at the calf, at the Achilles, rather than the knee. Sometimes you hit it, sometimes you miss. It's okay, as long as your intention is in the right place. But really nice job consistently batting down the head, using collar ties, dancing on the feet, showing a good presence of moving around and utilizing a good amount of mat space as well. And Adam is also doing something that I haven't mentioned here that he's doing fantastic. He's not allowing his training partner, or his opponent rather, to contact his head for any meaningful period of time. If you can be the one on the back of their head longer than they are on yours, I guarantee them doing this for 3 or 4 minutes is going to make them exhausted. The little muscles in the back of your neck, no matter how big or thick or gross your neck is, are not very robust. And if you can exhaust that with your training partner or your opponent before they can do it to you, you're in a much better position to win the match efficiently. Another thing Adam is doing here that is very good is consistently using these thumb down grips. This is something I love to do in my own training, in my own competing. When somebody goes to reach for you, you can take a thumb up grip and then start to move their hand upwards, but then that usually opens up your elbow and it's not really ideal. Or you can take thumb down grips, rotate the hand down and around so that your elbow's tighter towards your body and their elbow's flared out. As you can see, Adam's opponent here, this gives you a lot of access to use your secondary hand as an arm drag, or pumping your elbow to the inside position and then gaining access to an underhook. If you don't get any of those things, that mere concept or that mere consistent turning down of the thumb and widening their elbow is going to give you a breakthrough if you persist with it. The way that I like to think about it, that Adam's doing a pretty decent job here, opens up the arm drag, we'll go into that in a second, is just prodding. Just prodding, testing, experimenting. Is it going to be a shoulder post? Is it going to be a collar tie? Is it going to be an underhook? Is it going to be an outside pick for the leg? And again, like I'm speaking about, you're just giving your opponent many different options that they have to react and respond to correctly, because if they don't, they're going to get taken down. Compare this to how most of you guys will be doing your takedowns if you have very little takedown knowledge and very little time in the standing position, because the traditional approach doesn't really teach takedowns. You're probably just going to dive in on something, hell for leather, and just grab on it and resist as much as possible. It's very easy to see coming. It's very one-dimensional, and it's very unsuccessful most of the time. And you will be exhausting yourself completely because you think it's one and done and it's a sprint and you just got to get it down because of either a lack of competency or a lack of confidence because of these things. And so hopefully this video is demonstrating how to do that and evade those sorts of situations. Adam hits a beautiful arm drag with this thumb turned down grip. Once more on this left-hand side. The one adjustment I will make here is that he goes to the elbow as opposed to the armpit. You usually want to go to the armpit to drag their full torso forwards, because if they limp their elbow up and away, the likelihood that you slip off their elbow is quite high. But the likelihood that you slip all the way down from the armpit to the elbow in the same scenario is quite small. So you always want to aim for the armpit. And then he throws a hook in initially, either going for arm drag to Sasai, which is a very good technique because it stops them from taking their far hip around the corner. Or you can start to think about it like a very seamless entry to the back as you start to put one hook in. But Adam does a fantastic job here chasing this up. And I'll show you guys the finish because it's beautiful to watch. You don't see twisters in competition very much, but obviously from 10th Planet guys, you definitely see it. And then he gets the win and he's very happy for it. So really good representation of taking things smoothly, making sure that you're prodding and using all of your tools available, not necessarily just going to one thing once, burning yourself out in the process, and then having yourself be exhausted with very little energy to defend your opponent's attacks. And then also taking your mind away from being defensive only, giving you that free space to make good decisions in your offense is something that can absolutely revolutionize your competing, because you're going to have control and you're going to have composure on the feet that's going to skyrocket your confidence, knowing you can get to people, get them on the ground, and then increases your chance of finishing them because you're not just collar tie war, collar tie war, collar tie war. And again, I've been part of those matches. They're very boring to watch. They're very boring to be a part of. So you'd rather not be a part of them. So now that we turned your stand up from collar tie wars to confident, composed, and concise takedowns, we need to now systemize your training to make sure that if you don't do any of those things, you can get off your back, you can sweep your opponent, you can pin them, and then you can submit them. So even if the takedown fails, you've got a plan B. The way we do that is by systemizing your training, and you can do that by watching this video next. Hopefully you enjoy. See you in the next one.